This is just a short explanation, an introduction to the subject of ear training. Now, ear training is just the time given to describe developing your ability to recognise different combinations of sounds and notes that are sort of spaced in a certain identifiable way in relation to one another. So, why would you want to develop your ear? Well, if you're a singer or you play music and you would like to have really great pitch as a vocalist, or to be able to play things by ear as a musician, being able to identify things with your ear is the important first part of that. It also starts to give you a much bigger connection with and understanding of the music that you might want to write and or perform, if you can understand what's happening in it, and put a name to that. So of course you don't have to know what things are called and how they're put together to enjoy them or to play them, but it gives you a deeper level of engagement and arguably just makes you more valuable as a collaborator as well. I think the more you're able to identify things and understand things yourself, the more enjoyment you actually get from playing and writing and performing. So it's a bit like if you ever were taken to a museum on a school trip and somebody explained what was going on in the painting, and like, oh, that thing's refers to this, and oh, that's interesting. So after with that kind of deeper level of knowledge, you're then able to appreciate the visual art in a different way. And so with music, you can just enjoy it on its own standing, but it's kind of satisfying, especially if you're putting a certain amount of time into learning how to play and improving your skill, to be able to go that much deeper. So ear training is basically to do with our awareness of pitch. There's two types of ways that we can relate to pitch. You might have heard about the expression of perfect pitch. That means that if I were to play any note, a person with perfect pitch could tell me what that note was called. I don't have perfect pitch. I think it'd probably be quite useful, but what is much more useful is a well-developed sense of relative pitch. And what that means is an awareness of how two notes are spaced relative to one another, whether they are close together, whether they are far apart, and what the exact distance between them is. So relative pitch is the mind's understanding of what the ear is hearing. If I take a C and then I play a G, the combination of those notes, happening one after the other, creates a certain effect in our mind's perception. Our mind creates meaning out of that. And that combination has a character that is different than if I play a C followed by a B. That gives us a different feeling. So that effect doesn't really exist in reality. It just exists in our mind. It's what our mind makes of what it hears. So relative pitch is an exploration of how our mind interprets what it hears. The mind puts those sounds together and produces an effect when we hear them played together or in a series. When it comes to the Western music system, we've got 12 notes, and the guitar's got usefully 12 frets. So we can find every single note on every single fret, on every single string, rather, not on every single fret, clearly. So if I play a chord, it's quite easy to hear the highest note in that. But once you've unlocked or opened up your ear, you'll be able to hear all the other notes in that chord too. So you can learn to kind of hear more deeply, and this is another part of the benefit of training your ear a little bit. If you want to write vocal harmonies, it's useful to be able to do this too. And the more you develop your ear, the richer the quantity of choices available to you musically is going to be. You could describe music as a hearing art, and the more you develop your hearing, the more you're going to be a great musician. The technical difficulties are solved just by, time plus action. If you do this stuff, any technical problems can be solved. After you've solved those technical problems, your ability to be musical is much more about your decisions, and your decisions are much more about what you can kind of hear and tell and therefore what you decide to do. So if I play, just go back to this, if I play a C note and then an E on top, I get one kind of sound. If I switch the order of those notes and then I play an E with a C on top, sounds a little bit different, doesn't it? If I play a C and I go up the scale and I go, and I stop on the 7th note, it sounds kind of unresolved, doesn't it? We really want it to go back to, we really want it to finish. But if I play that same B in a different context, it doesn't sound like what's going anywhere. It sounds perfectly happy. So if you put the same note in different places, it either has an energy of being stable or an energy of wanting to move. And when you start hearing these in music, you can start using it. And when you get to improvising, being able to identify what relationships sound a certain way means that you're able to then create those in the music that you write. So what we're gonna is, you can't get away from needing a little bit of theory in order to start labeling the relationships. So you might already have some knowledge about notes. We've got, as I said a little bit earlier, 12 notes in the Western music system. We only have 7 note names though, which means that we have to kind of, a bit like when you go down a street and somebody's converted the basement of a house and you get 36 and then 36B, because otherwise there's not enough numbers. For the 7 letters we've got A, B, C, D, E, F and G, and then it starts back at A. We kind of like create the extra letter names by calling them sharps or flats. So we could call the note right next to A sharp, and the note the other side of A flat. Don't worry too much about that. There's a bit more information on musical spelling elsewhere. Essentially, you can train your ear without worrying about the note names, even though it is generally a good thing eventually to start learning about them. So how we're going to start is by taking the major scale. The major scale is a series of notes that lots and lots of Western music uses, and you'll already be very familiar with it from music that you've listened to. So if I start on 1 and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you're probably already hearing in your head 1. Anybody not hearing that? That's just based on, that's already programmed into you from everything that you've heard. There's a certain amount of musical expectations that already live in your head. So eventually you're going to be able to hear any of those 2 notes from 1 to 2, 1 to 6, 1 to 7, and other notes that I haven't even mentioned yet, and you'll be able to immediately hear that that's what the distance is. But today we're just going to start with 1 interval. Interval is a word for the distance between 2 notes. So we're going to take that 1, what note is that? 1, and we're going to go to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the distance between 1 and 5 is called a fifth. And I can play those 2 notes one after the other. That's a melodic interval. And I can also play them together. And that is a harmonic interval. So when they're played at the same time, you'll see that if I play other 2 notes at the same time, they sound a bit different. So you'll get to the point where you can recognise that something is a fifth being played at the same time. So for now, what we're going to do, I'm going to show you 2 ways. One way doesn't need you to know the note names, and the other way does. So this interval of a fifth is the first one that we're going to learn. When I originally studied at college, we had to learn all of them at the same time, and having looked into different methods of ear training, I think this thing of learning 1 interval at a time really well is actually much better. you get a chance to assimilate it much more deeply. So let's go. So we're going to just say 1-5. 1-5, 1-5. And then you're just going to sing that interval with me. Don't worry about the quality of singing. It's not a singing exercise. It just helps it get into your ear. So you're going to go 1-5, 1-5, la 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 la, and then 5-1, 5-1, la 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 la. The interval of a fifth on guitar. I've just got the open string there, and then my finger on the second fret of the fifth string. To do the next one, it's just like a two-finger power chord shape. You don't actually even need to play this. You can just listen to this recording. But if you want to play it and train it yourself, that's how it is. And then we go la la, 1-5, 1-5, la la.